President Yoon heads to the G7 summit in Hiroshima, Japan. A series of bilateral summits are scheduled and a possible trilateral summit with the U.S. and Japan. Following negotiations with Tokyo, South Korea is to send its Fukushima wastewater inspection team from Sunday to Friday, with activities to include Q&A and inspections of the management process. Documents on two Korean grassroots revolutions have been inscribed on the UNESCO Memory of World Register. Good afternoon. We begin in Hiroshima, Japan, where the annual G7 summit has officially kicked off, bringing together heads of 7 of the world's major economies: the US, Japan, Germany, the UK, France, Canada, and Italy. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida welcomed the other leaders to the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park earlier this morning. This marks the first time that the heads of G7 nations have visited the memorial park together. The memorial park, located at the heart of Hiroshima, commemorates the victims of the atomic bomb dropped on the city during the World War II and includes the structure of the few buildings remaining from the explosion. South Korean President Yoon, along with the heads of other guest nations, is set to visit the memorial park on Sunday. Again, President Yoon is attending the G7 summit as a leader of an invited country. A series of bilateral summits are scheduled on the sidelines and a possible trilateral summit with the U.S. and Japan. Shin Se-byuk has the details.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol will fly over to Hiroshima on Friday for the G7 summit. He will be the 4th South Korean leader to participate in the multilateral event. The total of 9 sessions will start on Friday with a discussion about the global economy over a working lunch, and in the afternoon, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky joining virtually. Indo-Pacific-related issues, most likely centered around Chinese issues, along with nuclear disarmament, are also expected over a working dinner. On Saturday, economic security talks in the morning will be followed by expanded sessions with 8 invited countries, including South Korea, India, and Australia. The talks will cover 2 themes: food, public health, development, and gender, and climate change and energy security, where Yoon is to share his views on. On the final day, an event for invited leaders and a session on peace, stability, and prosperity will precede the closing ceremony. President Yoon will be returning to Seoul on Sunday. Meanwhile, during the 3-day summit, Yoon is set to have one-on-one meetings with 6 government leaders. Those include talks with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on Sunday. The 2 leaders are also scheduled to make a joint visit to a monument honoring Korean victims of the 1945 atomic bomb that wrecked Hiroshima. The highly anticipated trilateral summit between Yoon, Kishida, and U.S. President Joe Biden has not been announced yet. However, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on Wednesday said the 3 leaders are eager to meet and that it's a matter of scheduling, while mentioning Biden has a packed schedule. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Ahead of the G7 summit, leaders of the U.S. and Japan held talks, highlighting the recent improvement in Seoul-Tokyo ties and discussing ways to strengthen trilateral cooperation among the 3 nations to counter North Korea and China. Arirang reports.
South Korea and Japan are expected to continue mending ties at the G7 summit this Friday through Sunday in Hiroshima. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida met with U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday ahead of the G7 summit, where he said he will continue to work towards improving South Korea-Japan relations. Biden responded that he welcomes news of the 2 nations strengthening ties. This comes after Kishida extended an invitation to South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol to be a guest at the summit of the Group of 7. Earlier this month, the 2 leaders held a summit in Seoul. Ahead of the G7, Kishida and Biden also discussed ways to strengthen their trilateral relations with South Korea regarding North Korea's nuclear threat and China's growing assertiveness. Nuclear issues are likely to figure prominently at the G7 summit, whose host city Hiroshima was devastated by an atomic bomb at the end of World War II. Seoul, Tokyo and Washington have a three-way summit scheduled on the sidelines, where the three nations are likely to discuss North Korea's growing missile threat as well as deterrence measures. The United States has welcomed recent efforts by South Korea and Japan to improve relations, as North Korea's increasing long-range missile capabilities are regarded as not only a threat to South Korea and Japan's security, but also to the US mainland. Seoul and Tokyo are also concerned about potential security threats that may arise from a potential conflict between China and Taiwan, while the United States is looking to counter China's growing global influence. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Following negotiations with Tokyo, South Korea will be sending its Fukushima wastewater inspection team from May 21st to 26th. That's according to South Korea's first Vice Minister of Government Policy Coordination, Park Guyan, who announced the details of the plan to send a group of experts to Japan to evaluate the situation at the plant. The expert group, led by Chairman of the Nuclear Safety and Security Commission, Yoon, aims to verify Japan's contaminated water purification and discharge facilities and its ability to analyze radioactive material. The team hopes to gather other information that's needed to ensure the health and safety of the Korean public. The mission follows the agreement made during South Korea-Japan summit earlier this month and will involve in-depth Q&A sessions and on-site inspections over the 6-day period. South Korea's documents on two of the country's historic grassroots revolutions have been added to UNESCO's Memory of the World Register. The latest edition brings the total number of South Korea's heritage items to the UNESCO list to 18. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The April 19th revolution led to the resignation of President Syngman Rhee and became a cornerstone for the development of democracy in South Korea. And long before this movement, the Donggak Peasant Revolution in the late Joseon dynasty fought against corrupt leadership and foreign aggression. Both events were integral in South Korea's push to achieve democracy. To mark the significance of the two movements, UNESCO on Thursday added South Korea's archival records related to the two grassroots revolutions to UNESCO's Memory of the World Register. According to the Cultural Heritage Administration, the archives of the April 19th revolution included over 1,000 materials related to the 1960 civil uprising that ended the dictatorship of South Korea's first president in 1960. The documents show the causes and development of the revolution and are made up of materials from government agencies, the National Assembly and political parties, as well as media articles, personal records, investigative reports, photographs, and videos. And the archives of the Donggak Peasant Revolution consist of a total of 185 documents related to the uprising against the corruption within the ruling class and the fight against the Japanese presence in Korea. The civil movement consisted of an armed rebellion led by peasants and followers of the Donggak religion during the Joseon dynasty. The latest edition brings the total of South Korea's heritage items on the UNESCO list to 18, and the first since 2017, when a royal seal, an investiture book collection from the Joseon dynasty, the archives of the National Debt Redemption Movement, and Joseon Tongshinsa, which consist of diplomatic records of Korean envoys to Japan, were all added to the UNESCO list. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Over in Ukraine, Russia fired 30 cruise missiles into different parts of Ukraine, most of which Kyiv claims to have shot down. The escalating tensions come ahead of the G7 summit, which is expected to unveil fresh sanctions against Moscow. Yoon has the latest.
Early Thursday local time, Russia fired 30 cruise missiles against different parts of Ukraine, testing the capabilities of Ukraine's air defenses. Ukraine's Air Force said in a statement that 29 of the missiles were shot down, as were 2 exploding drones and 2 reconnaissance drones. Ukrainian forces shot down most of the Russian missiles directed at the region, but falling debris set off fires in several areas, and the missile that got through struck an industrial building in the southern region of Odessa, killing 1 person and wounding 2. The mayor of Kyiv warned people to remain in shelters as falling debris from the shoot-down caused fires. There have been no immediate reports of casualties. Overnight, loud explosions sounded throughout Kyiv as Russian forces targeted the capital for the 9th time this month. This was following Ukraine shooting down 6 Russian hypersonic missiles in a single night earlier in the week on Tuesday. Lately, there's been a significant increase in the frequency of missile attacks from Russia. In a separate development, a freight train transporting grain in Russian-occupied Crimea derailed, reportedly due to an explosion. Train services on the affected section of the line have been suspended and no injuries have been reported. The railway operator said the incident was caused by the intervention of third parties and an investigation would be carried out. Meanwhile, G7 leaders are gathering in Hiroshima for discussions on Friday, during which the Russian invasion of Ukraine will be high on the agenda. According to a U.S. official, the latest U.S. sanctions would cut off roughly 70 entities from Russia and other countries from receiving U.S. exports by adding them to the commerce blacklist. And there will be upwards of 300 new sanctions against individuals, entities, vessels, and aircraft. Yoon, Arirang News.
Hyundai and Kia have agreed to an estimated $200 million settlement over claims that their cars are easy to steal. According to the South Korean automakers, the settlement includes $145 million provided to some 9 million owners of stolen vehicles for costs not covered by their vehicle's insurance, such as the cost of renting a replacement car. The vehicles in question were equipped with turnkey ignitions that lacked some of the basic auto theft prevention technology. This made it easy to steal them using a USB cable to start the car, a technique that spread through social media last year. The automakers have created a software patch to try to fix the problem. Those who are unable to upgrade the software will be eligible to receive $300 for installing other protective equipment. South Korea is counting down to the third launch of its homegrown space rocket, Nuri. The third launch is all the more special as it will be carrying actual operational satellites, unlike dummy satellites in previous launches. Our Choi Soo-young breaks down the details of those satellites and their missions.
South Korea's aerospace history will be rewritten on May 24th. The Nuri space rocket's third launch is completely different from the 2 previous ones. The first and second launches in October 2021 and June 2022 were test launches with dummies, but this time is the first operational launch carrying 8 actual satellites. So, which satellites will be on board? First, the largest and heaviest main payload satellites, next-generation small satellites the second, made by KAIST, will be placed at the front of the third stage of Nuri. It has a main camera with a resolution of 5 meters, an observation width of 40 kilometers, and weighs 150 kilograms to help it explore 600 to 800 kilometers of mission altitude ranges. It uses an imaging radar that is not affected by light or clouds, day and night, or even severe weather conditions.
NextSat II is primarily a satellite that captures radar images. It is a synthetic satellite that sends radar waves and detects the return waves to create composite images. It differs from the optical camera images and has differences in performance compared to the existing Arirang 5 satellite due to its scale.
4 Doyosat, named after small but fast birds, developed by the Korea Astronomy and Space Science Institute, will also be on board. It is also known as SNIPE, small-scale magnetospheric and ionospheric plasma experiment. The world's very first will 4 satellites fly in formation to observe space weather. 4 nanosatellites, 가람, 나래, 다솔, and 라온, about 10 kilograms each, will provide real-time transmission of fine space plasma distribution, Earth's magnetic field, solar wind, and space storms at a mission altitude of 500 kilometers. In this third launch, the achievements of Korean satellite manufacturing companies are noticeable. The space radiation detector by Lumir, the optical payload by JustTech, and the polarimetric camera by Cairo-Space will perform their respective missions. In particular, Cairo-Space's CUBE satellites will come back to Earth automatically without space debris after the mission is complete. These 8 satellites will be a milestone for Korea as a space powerhouse, venturing into space with the country's cutting-edge technology. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
South Korea has been struggling with the oversupply of rice, the nation's traditional staple grain, amid changing dietary habits. This prompted a controversial bill forcing the government purchase of excess rice to stabilize the prices, which was eventually vetoed by President Yoon. But a new type of rice flour could help solve the problem. Our Lee Soo-jin reports.
South Korea has come up with a new type of rice flour. It's called karumi, and it could be the answer to the nation's excess rice issue. The average amount of rice consumed per person in the country last year fell to a record low of 56.7 kilograms, around half of what was consumed 30 years ago. To address this, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs is planning to promote the usage of karumi, or rice flour, the world's first that doesn't require water.
Normally, rice needs to be soaked in water overnight so it can be ground into fine powder. This not only requires a large amount of water, but nutrients may also be lost.
This type of rice flour, however, produced from a mutant variety of rice developed by the Rural Development Administration, has a starch structure similar to that of wheat, allowing it to be dry milled.
If rice is dry milled, it can save production costs and the quality of the starch remains intact. So when the bread is made with this flour, it remains gluten-free and chewy.
This bakery, located in Sejong, is one of the 9 in the nation that uses more than 1 ton of karumi. The baker takes the rice flour and whisks it into the mixer along with the same ingredients that are added when baking with wheat. The ratio of egg whites to yolk for cake rolls, however, is 50-50, which requires more heating. The dough is then placed in the oven without the addition of gluten. The wide variety of bread made using karumi has been received well by customers.
People say that karumi bread is easier to digest and that it's chewy. It also has a soft texture.
There are still several barriers to overcome before karumi can be commercialized. Its price, in particular. The head baker pays nearly $70 for one 20-kilogram bag. As of December 2022, a 20-kilogram bag of regular rice costs just under half that. The Agricultural Ministry, however, says that it has begun mass production of karumi, which will ultimately lower prices. The government is thus hopeful that this innovative rice flour may soon not only become widespread domestically, but become a major export item. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News, Sejong.
The city of Seoul is conducting a survey for the design for its new slogan, Seoul, My Soul. From May 13th until the end of the month, the public can visit the Seoul City website and choose from among the 4 final candidates. The chosen design will undergo additional refinement before being officially unveiled in the second half of this year. In March, the city selected as a new slogan, Seoul, My Soul, through a citizen vote.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the United States, Montana has become the first state to ban the popular short video sharing platform TikTok. Governor Greg Gianforte signed the bill on Wednesday. He said to protect the personal data of Montana residents from the Chinese Communist Party. It's been alleged that TikTok's parent company has close ties to Beijing and that the app collects users' private data for use by the Chinese government. The new law will begin in January next year. It will ban app stores from offering TikTok within the state, with a potential fine for violators of up to $10,000 per day. TikTok could also be hit with similar fines if it continues to operate within the state, but it's unclear how this will be enforced. Individual users, however, will not be fined. TikTok has responded, calling the ban unlawful. It's promised to defend the rights of its users to continue using the app in the state. Turning over to Colombia now, rescue teams are desperately searching for 4 children believed to have survived a plane crash. Search teams on Wednesday reportedly found a makeshift shelter and items belonging to the children in the thick Colombian jungle. The find generated initial confusion as Colombian President Gustavo Petro on the same day tweeted that the children had been found alive. He deleted his tweet a short time later as reports of their discovery were unconfirmed. The ages of the children range between 13 years and just 11 months. They were aboard a small plane on May 1st, along with their mother, a pilot, and a co-pilot when the crash occurred. None of the adults survived. In sports news, tennis legend Rafael Nadal has withdrawn from the French Open. The 22-time Grand Slam champion made the announcement Thursday, citing a hip injury. The injury came during a second-round Australian Open defeat in January, which Nadal said is taking longer than expected to heal. The 36-year-old added he will be away from the sport for the next few months, and that 2024 is likely to be his final year playing professional tennis. He said that he plans to return in September for the Davis Cup finals. Known as the King of Clay, Nadal has previously won the clay court French Open 14 times. And finally, remarkable video from Turkey circulating on social media shows a sofa seemingly gliding through the air during a storm. Strong winds sent the furniture hurtling into the sky from the balcony of a high-rise building on Wednesday as heavy rains and storms hit the Turkish capital of Ankara. Local reports say the sofa landed in the garden of the person filming the video and remained in one piece. The storms also blew off roofs and windows and uprooted trees. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Those of us in the western parts of the country are having summer heat again. Not to mention, as for the capital region, we didn't get much relief from the heat yesterday, so it is as hot. While those on the East Coast are having much lower daytime highs due to easterly winds. And further west, stronger sunshine is beaming down with higher UV rays. The sun's rays are strongest between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., so limit exposure to the sun during these hours if you can, and sun protection is a must. Meanwhile, ozone levels will be high in Incheon during the day. Those in Gyeongju are noticing some huge fluctuations in temperatures this week. The area saw daytime highs nearing 35 degrees on Tuesday, but is only getting up to the low 20s this afternoon. And normal to good air quality is expected nationwide all day today. Mostly sunny and warm weekend is in the forecast, but temperatures will go down a few notches from today. Now that's Korea for you. Here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend.